you guys doing, man?
How are
Good.
you?
I'm
Glad
doing
to be
good.
on
I'm
the
gonna
show.
avoid. Yeah, I'm gonna avoid any puns about any of your songs. To introduce you guys. So, yeah, being a dad and a grandfather, I'm kind of pulled into that
Yeah, right.
temptation.
Love
Basically, David and Chris were from Austin, and
Hmm.
they moved out. Chris moved out before David out to LA because the whole scene was happening. And once Chris got out, he was, feeling out musicians. And at that point, it wasn't Junkyard; it was just Chris Gates, basically calling on all the old punk bands. And because at that point, all the punk bands had broken up in LA, and everybody was going rock. They saw the writing on the wall, which was basically, money and better-looking girls. So, so basically, I think like 86, 87, David moved out from Austin along with his band, which was Johnny Hell, which was the drummer, and Max Gottlieb, who was a guitar player, and they had a band called the Torpedoes. So once they moved out here, Chris said, well, let's just all play together and change the name of the band to Junkyard. And at that point, they were just a cover band, and I got in the band basically 6 or 7 months after they started. I was in other bands and whatnot, but I had known Chris for many years through the whole punk rock community. And so basically, yeah, right around 87, 88, we started playing around more, writing more original material. And back then it was, whether you knew it or not, you were playing in front of, 50, 60 people in a very tiny little room, probably about the size of this.
Hmm.
Out of those 50 or 60 people, you got 5 or 6 A&R people that are out there to scout because they had just signed, at that point, I think, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, did Jet Boy get signed before Guns N' Roses or right at the same time?
I mean, there was those Jet Boy Faster and GNR all got signed. I think GNR was probably the
Yeah,
first.
yeah, it was interesting because when we got picked up, basically we got picked up by we did a bunch of shows. We got a lot of business cards, and the first guy that gave us the business card where we called him and he actually called us back was the guy Mio Vukovic from Geffen Records, who at that
Hmm.
point his his boss was Teresa Ensenat, who was the assistant to Tom Zutaut. So at that point, she was basically she had just married or got together, was going to get married to Steve Earle. So she was on her way out of Geffen on going over to Universal Music, basically to kind of handle Steve stuff as well as all the country music stuff. So we ended up getting passed down to a brand new A&R guy, which is good because he's young and he's hungry.
Hmm.
And but the band that we opened up for, which was Jane's Addiction, he was actually down there to see them, as well as the opening act, which was Green River, who we all know turned into Pearl Jam, or Mother Love Bone Pearl Jam, more artist orientated, where the guy wasn't going to get into our shit. He was just pretty much going to leave us alone. He was a big fan of all of our other punk rock bands, so he knew that we were basically a little more seasoned than like a brand new band that was coming in, because we all had tour experiences. We all booked our own tours. We all put out our own independent punk rock releases that actually did well. So we knew how to do the business aspect of it. And that at that point when we signed Guns N' Roses were not great. They were not in a great position. I think they released the first single, and I'm not really familiar on their history from like say 87 to 89, but I just remember when we got picked up, we didn't get picked up because they were doing so well. It wasn't like, oh, Guns N' Roses is doing great, we got to sign
Yeah,
20
that's
more
a
of
myth.
those.
That's a myth. A lot of people say, "Oh, because Guns N' Roses was so big." I'm like, they
No, they
were big
weren't.
for a long time. They were big on the
Yeah,
scene, but I recall thinking at the time, Faster Pussycat's first album made a much bigger noise than Appetite for the first 8 months. I mean, people are like, "Wow, it's gonna
yeah,
be Pussycat that's gonna do the best."
yeah.
I remember
It's
that.
like,
Yeah.
okay, well, Guns N' Roses is gonna be this kind of more off the side boutique because people thought they were just too
Hmm.
They
weird
were too
for.
much to handle also. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big myth that, especially with Junkyard, that they were signed because of Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses was not a success yet. So,
I just think
No.
it was a T-shirt and the hype. You know.
Which the
well, there's
t-shirt
that too.
the t-shirt didn't hurt. The story about the t-shirt was basically the guy who now owns Cleopatra Records, Brian Pereira. At that point, he was running a t-shirt place, a silk touring place. So we went in there and we were like, dude, we want to make just some shirts and give them away. And we made about probably 60 or 70 shirts. and every time we played or went out, we would just give them away to people. So I think Axel got his shirt, I think at the same show that you were at, Tim,
Yeah,
that Tim's band actually opened up for us. And we were just giving away shirts. It's like, fuck it, you know?
I got one. Yeah.
Yeah. What better way to promote? You know, it's like, fuck flyers. Here's a shirt.
Yeah.
And at that point,
Well, it paid off.
yeah, definitely. We were also other bands that we were in prior to Junkyard and Junkyard. We were we were friendly with all the guys in Guns N' Roses, because at that point we had all come up and been in different bands. So finally, when Junkyard kind of became this thing, and they would come and see us, and they were like, "Oh, this band's, you know, kind of, I like this band. It's interesting. It's not like all their other bands." You know, they finally got it together and, you know, figured out a good lineup. But that's kind of the whole Junkyard T-shirt thing or whatever. And also the reason why it says it 3 times, and people are saying, you know, did you nick it for like the Cheap Trick idea or whatever? What happened was on the silk screen, it was just supposed to be the line across in Junkyard once, and we kind of looked at it. It was like, yeah, put another one on. Put another one on. It wasn't like a conscious decision going in. We're going to bite. You know,
Right.
We actually didn't have a design idea.
I think one thing that's been through Junkyard's entire career, there's never been a grand plan. Like the best stuff
never.
we've ever done has just kind of happened, and
Yeah.
we're, you know, the more we get out of our own way, the better off we are. So logos, everything is
Yeah.
kind of in the now, and you know, not a lot of forethought, if that makes any sense.
No, which is good actually.
Yeah, we're not sitting around looking at spreadsheets going, okay, well, this demographic needs this and this needs that. It's like, nah, it'll just, you know, if it's meant to happen, it'll happen. If not, whatever, you know, it's not a big deal. Back then, the main songwriter and the singer being from the same town. And then you know, when we all 5 got together, originally, you know, it was a lot of that Southern stuff that we were playing, because that's what we were into at the time, which was, it seemed like the logical progression. We were done with punk rock, playing a million miles an hour. Then we kind of like went back into our old records that we kind of threw away because we were punk rock, which was Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, Skinner. So we kind of went backwards a bit and then started listening to that, and then kind of threw our own little punk rock kink in it to kind of give it that Southern bite, I guess. I don't know. You know, the first 2 records, they were great. I mean, we were young in age, but and we were a brand new band. So the first record obviously just came out like the piss and vinegar. Second record, you know, sophomore slump, so to say. But there were some good songs on that. But as we fast forward to like right now, we're so grown up in the way that the lyrics are done and the way the music is written. But we're still, like had Tim mentioned, we still have that same, you know, that same attitude where it's like, well, you know, if it's good enough, it'll work. If not, we're not going to put like that much effort into something to make it work. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I mean, with Tim's songwriting, it's really, we've matured, I guess, if you want to, for lack of a better word.
You know, it was a great template initially founded by the band, and so when you have that kind of footing, you know where you can, when you're going wrong and when you're going right. It feels good, and we're not trying to recreate what was done earlier, because you can't. We can't rewrite blues. Like, it's there. You have that. But what does the guy who's now in his 50s who wrote blues talk about? You know, and maybe we're unique in that we're not. But the band has always been. People relate to David and those songs so much because they were really honest of the time. Like, everything in those songs is true. You know, good, bad, or indifferent. And so when we kind of approach stuff now, we don't, you know, we don't talk about, you know, life insurance, mind you, but, you know, we do talk about the perils.
That's what you guys need, is a good life insurance song. Right?
We do talk about the things that, especially coming back with High Water, there was a big gap. So we had, you know, David had reserves, and we had things to talk about, like big life stuff that occurred to all of us in that period of time without writing. So it was pretty fertile ground. And I think people related to that too, because our fans are aging with us, hopefully. And hopefully the young folks just get it because they like it. And it's honest. I think people always appreciate honest music. So that's why it's always, you know, the initial concept of the band was rooted in such a good thing. And we have a great singer that also, you know, covers a multitude of sins, you know, and So I think that's part of it too. I don't think we, you know, like he was saying, we don't sit there and we spend a lot of time writing, but we don't overanalyze ourselves in that, other than going, this works for us, we feel good. But then we're very confident. But we don't sit there and go, well, you know, and hands off, we did this, we should do that again. We never do that.
Right.
Never
Yeah,
do
we
that.
do.
But we
We
can
never go backwards.
initially play a song and go, this is us. Like we can feel it pretty quickly, like this feels good for us. And it's our limitations as players and all these other things that make the sound, and we can lock into it, and you know, and it allows us to go forward well, because I'm really obsessed with not repeating and doing the same thing over and over again. I get really bored easily. And so maybe some of our fans don't like that part, but I think it's crucial that we keep trying to move the ball forward, even if it's only increments that we can see.
Right.
You know, but I see the progression all the time. And
So
how skinny is the first album was 89, right, Pat?
Right.
First album 89, second album 91.
91.
Yeah.
The aborted third album was recorded in 92-ish.
Yes.
What was that one?
And then there was a gap with a couple little weirdnesses in there. And then we put out a single, Faded, in 15. And then that led into the album High Water, which came out in 17. And then a year or so ago, we went back and circled back on the unreleased third album and kind of packaged that and put that out. So that's why.
But what's been really great, a lot of bands actually lately have been coming out, the classics, their big albums, are coming out with albums that are just as strong.
Right.
And you know, from this genre, which is fantastic, because it's like no one's gone anywhere, and these albums, and you guys are just coming out so strong. And the pressure's on now because
we did know that those albums are considered classics by some, you know, by a lot of people. And so, you know, with High Water, we were very, very circumspect about the quality. We knew it had to be really good from stem to stern, or else people were going to go, you know, they had it, but you know. And then the fact that it was received even better than we can imagine, and some people think it's our best album. So that's, to me, was a miracle. Like I was hoping like at least it'll be considered in the same rank, or not being too much of a letdown from this first two.
It's hard to rank it out.
And we were able to do, maybe to some people, even surpass. So it was beyond our expectations.
Yeah, obviously, it's hard for me to be like, yeah, you guys wrote this album, so let me give you my opinion.
Right.
Let me not insult you guys.
Yeah,
I'm also not a fanboy that's going to kiss your butt either. I'm not going to be like either or insult you.
Right.
But I mean, honestly, you're not the only band. Of a couple of the bands, the albums are so strong right now. It's so fantastic to hear. So good.
Yeah, and the Old Habits, there's been bootlegs of that floating out there, and we culled that down to 11. Those were the 11 that we thought were good, the best. Yep. And actually, that's when I came into the band. I started writing for the band on that album, which was going to be that album. I think there's even discussions about me maybe playing acoustic guitar and keyboards and singing on tour and stuff. There was all kinds of talk, but in essence, I was brought in, or I mean, it wasn't really brought in. We all basically lived in each other's pockets for years. Yeah. And so I'd be sitting around, and David, and we'd write. And I'd write with Chris, and I'd write with Brian, and I'd write with whoever. And that was the beginnings of that, and my more formal involvement. But mostly just as a songwriter. Right. And one of the songs on there, Tried and True, was just a song from my old band, Broken Glass. That was a song that was a latter song of ours that was written after our album, and then we got dropped, and we shopped trying to get a new deal. And that was one of the songs that we shopped to get a deal, and no one would touch us. So with that fucking song, and so David and especially Brian were like, well, we're taking that one. And so they took it. And just did it. And I was thrilled. And that sort of began it also too. Like, well, come on, and you're not doing anything. Help us write,
Right.
And so and when we did Old Habits, we basically sent the whole thing to everybody in the band and said, come up with 11. And we came down to almost the exact same song, maybe one or two songs different. So it was a pretty good consensus. There's always going to be people say like, oh, you left off this, left off that. But like I said, we're kind of sticklers for quality over quantity.
I hadn't heard it, so like to me, I just heard this.
Oh, so it's like,
okay, good.
Fresh new album for you then. Yeah, I mean,
it is. Yeah,
and it's great because Brian and Chris are on that. That's the original lineup there. And actually Todd's on bass there too. That's the first thing Todd recorded with the band too. So yeah, it's the band's on fire there. I didn't play on it. I played a little bit I think. But
You were there. You were there. I
I
mean,
was in the studio every day while it was
I
being done. Now, God, man, this is the
yeah,
old days. You're doing 24 track demos
demos.
out of
Are you
fancy.
serious?
I forget
Yeah,
which studio. Those are 24 track, 2-inch demos,
yeah,
and they sound better than most records today. So
yeah,
those were just the demos, and then you'd go and re-record it with a proper producer. But we brought in, I remember because I was in a band with this guy Rob, and he had moved out
Mhm.
to LA, and he'd become started to work. He quit being in bands and started working the record plant.
Yeah.
And he eventually became a producer. And I said, you should get Rob. He's from DC. It's a thing, because there's a lot of DC and Junkyard too, because of Brian.
yeah.
Yeah.
We got Rob in, and Rob Schnaff, who ended up discovering Beck and producing all kinds of people, the new X album actually.
Yeah.
And he's still a big but that was his first like real gig as a producer. And that was sort of from the DC, me and him being in a band. And I said, give Rob a shot, because he was up for it. And I think he ended up doing like producing a Poison live record, like producing and mixing a Poison. That really
He
kind of
did,
got
yeah.
me going too. But anyway, so that was so I was involved in a lot of that period, and then it all just went to shit as things
Yeah.
tend to. And
Yeah.
and then we didn't touch new songs for a really long time, really.
Really until 2013 or something like that.
Yeah.
2014.
Yeah. So
You guys had you guys did have a lull for a little while.
Yeah, yeah. We it basically when we got dropped from Geffen, that was like 90. I think it was late '92 or '93. All of us went our separate ways for 7 or 8 years, and when we got dropped, it wasn't. We got the one-page, release from Geffen rather than the. Our contract was like this big, and then our release was like, here's a piece of paper, sign it, get out of here. After that, we just
Kevin had a big dumpster sale with everybody at the end there.
So
he annihilated so many bands.
Oh God, yeah. So we at that point, we got dropped, and we all had to meet down at the rehearsal studio to grab our shit. And it was like, okay, well, what are you gonna do? It's like, I don't know, I got to get my shit together. So basically, at that point, we never even said to each other like, oh, that's it, the band's over or anything. We were just like, well, we got to grow up now. We got to figure out what to do. We need a job. We need money. And so Chris, went his way, and David went his way. Me and Tim played in a band together that actually got picked up by MCA. And then we got, the typical Spinal Tap thing came in. I think it was 1999 or 2000.
right.
Like, do you guys want to open up for the Super Suckers at the House of Blues? Do you guys want to get back together? And do you also want to go to Japan? And it was like, what? Okay, we had not. We'd speak to each other back then, calling in and checking in on each other, but we never had, never thought about like, let's get back together, because back then it was like, we had other things to do.
Like
but
having a vacation with guitars for you guys, right? Go to Japan.
Oh,
awesome.
At that point, we jumped on it.
I would be like, I don't really care what happens.
It's like all expenses paid. Yeah, okay, sounds good. So we did that, and the Super Suckers opening up for them at the House of Blues in LA, that helped out a lot.
That's pretty cool.
And at that point, we kind of looked at each other. It's like, well, and I was with another band that was touring Europe a lot called Speed Buggy. And I had connections to a promoter that was doing a festival in the south of Spain. So I hit him up. I did the festival in 2002, and I said, hey, do you want Junkyard? And he's like, yeah, sure. Would Junkyard like to headline the second day of the festival? And I'm like, headline? I'm like, well, I don't know about that, but we're,
we'll think about it.
Like, I don't think we're that big, but I basically brokered a really good price, and we flew in, and we almost headlined, but we basically played right below, what was it, Twisted Sister or something like that. Yeah. And that was 2003. So we were at that point when I did that festival, I'm like, we could probably do more of these every year if you guys want. So at that point, it became, where are we going on our summer vacation? And I would spend about 6 months and book some, try to book something. And there was a couple of years where there were lulls where we didn't do anything, but we did get back together and play like, 04, 05, 06, 07, 08. We played 1 or 2 shows in LA. And in 2008,
I started playing in '99 because Brian was already
99,
religious at this point. So
right,
that's right, because Brian left the band. That's when you came in.
So he's like, well, I can't do it, so you do it, and that's how that happened. And then Brian sort of came back when we started working on High Water because Chris had stepped out and he kind of moved back. So it seems kind of strange. But then Brian was involved. So Brian was doing shows with us occasionally too.
Yeah,
when he would do them. Except in Europe, we would kind of have like, we did a bunch with Chris and then Brian, and then we started when Brian came back in. That's when kind of the idea of doing
I
new
have a question.
songs really kind of
Hold
happened.
this thought for a second. So you came in, you were taking over Brian's spot on guitar.
Yes.
So you learned you played, and you were doing it for a long time. So when he came back,
I started on Brian's parts.
Did you keep playing it with Chris your part now?
I had to go to Chris's parts.
Okay, so I was wondering who kept which part. Like you're like, no, it's mine now. You left it. Like when you get it from a chair, you're like, punch buggy or shotgun.
I was thrilled to have someone else come in and play Brian's parts because they were hard. He played. He's much more flash than me. I like playing rhythm guitar. We all want to be Malcolm in this band.
It was a fun question because I love how the dynamic. You know what I mean?
No, I was thrilled when we got Jimmy in. I'm like, you got to take all those fucking solos, man. I'm going back to Chris's parts. I can play those fucking things. So but then Brian played on the record too a ton. Yeah. So then he just had a whole bunch of new flash solos, which are all great. But shit, I mean, I didn't play one solo on High Water. I don't think.
I think you did one.
I did I do little bits and bobs, but it doesn't really interest me,
Right.
I have to be honest. I dread when I have a solo to play live. I'm like, ugh, concentrate,
Focus.
I'd rather have a beer.
Focus, like, ugh. You know what I mean?
Anyway, I'm glad you guys have got your second energy. So at that point, you guys really pick up speed to where we almost are now.
It was fits and starts, and then when we kind of decided to really we were approached by a label-ish, which actually seemed pretty legit. I'm like, well, let's get in a room and see if we can write something. And so we David and Brian would come in town and do a Bad Religion record and basically move into my house because he didn't want to stay in hotels. So he'd be here for I don't know, 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
So we became like roommates again in our 40s, which is kind of bizarre, but
awkward. I would say awkward myself, but
right.
I was single at the time, and he was in a band. So
the Rock and Roll Odd Couple. That's like a VH1 show. They should have a camera on you guys.
We have lived together on and off since our mid-20s.
Forever,
so it's pretty seamless, and so we started writing, and then Brian would send me little iPhone things, and he'd play into his phone in his hotel on tour, like just literally guitar into the thing. And that's how Faded came around. That was the thing he would send me these Brian 1, and I go, oh, that's interesting, and it would just maybe be a riff. And then he would come back in town. I'd say, this was cool. And I'd sort of begin to construct it. I said, I took this part out and made it just this. And then David would come down, and when he had time, and we'd sit there in my little studio and just bang it out. And then, so the first 2 or 3 songs, one of them was Faded, and David had The River, which was the B-side. And we had one other song that ended up making the album that was floating, but it wasn't really cohesive enough. Mm-hmm. And we went into a rehearsal room and knocked them up in an evening, and then went down and cut them at this Hurley studio there, because Brian had a connection through Bad Religion over a weekend. And we cut the single with Faded and The River, and then we made the video, and I mean, I don't know if we thought, and then that deal kind of fell apart, but we still just continued on, just being the way we are, just like, well, we're here. Yeah. And then the song, people love the fucking song. I mean, we were kind of shocked by that, like, wow, the song, you don't know. And so then we got more momentum. And so it was like, okay, I reached out to Acetate just personally. It turns out I had known Rick forever, but the guy who owns Acetate, I'd known, but I don't, the old days were really fucking hazy for me. So, okay. Yeah. And I sent him an email through the Acetate webpage. I'm like, hi, I'm Tim of Junkyard. These are the 3 new Junkyard songs we've written. Would you like to make an album with us? And he called me back. He called me. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, let's make a fucking album. And that's how we got a record deal. I swear to God. That's great. So then we really began in earnest trying to write the rest of what was going to be High Water. And so there had been songs percolating for months, but then we really kicked it up a notch. And David had some things in pocket that he'd been, wanted to do for years. And so
is David doing all the lyrics? Like, how's the song structure for you guys divvied up? Like,
really, really ad hoc. Sometimes he's got the whole thing, period. Like a song like Styrofoam Cup off the new album. He sang that to me.
That's right.
And I
Yeah.
just played the chords underneath until I figured out what he was doing.
like
Right?
so he doesn't play any guitar or any like cowboy cards or anything. I know sometimes.
No, he can't even do
No.
that. He kind of and go, no, a little faster here, or he'll, kind of direct. But so and while it was like that on the album, he had that song, and sometimes he might have even demoed him in other bands. A couple were even older like that, but some he just had. And Styrofoam Cup, I remember specifically, and he's like, I'm thinking kind of like a Joe Walshy Stones thing. I'm like, okay, and we just kind of would just bang it out. And then some songs like Faded, Brian and I put together the music, and he came in and says, I have this thing, Faded. Kids say it's about getting stoned now. I'm like, oh, okay, news to me. And then some other things like Cut from the Same Cloth. I think I wrote the chorus, and Todd wrote that basic riff. And then I said, I had this idea for a song about, being cut from, about your parents and how that, he's like, oh, okay. And then, he takes it to his other place. And so it really varies. Hell or High Water off that album, Brian had the chorus lyrics and kind of the melody. And we both went
It's very
away.
cohesive, though. The lyrics don't feel like it's a different, it feels like it's one mind.
And that's a really interesting one, because he had the chorus lyrics, and we kind of banged out a demo, and I banged out a demo, gave it some kind of structure, but it was really just Brian kind of humming, going, Hell or High Water. And I said, and okay, David, here's the chorus. Go away and let's meet up in a week and see what we got. And so we I wrote 2 or 3 verses. He wrote a couple of verses, and the song is first verse is mine, second verse is his. We just go, oh, these both were, because for some reason, we both picked up on the vibe of it, this kind of, apocalyptic sort of, with plenty of, biblical references ish. And, so I literally the second verse is all him. We didn't change the word. The first verse was all me, and we had never seen each other's verses till we showed up to sing the fucking thing.
Oh, really?
So, so we had like things. I go, well, mine works good here, and we'll just put yours as the second. This kind of works pretty good. And that
sounds like how Frank Zappa used to put his albums together, right? His songs, he cut this part here, and he put it here, and take a live piece here, and it all worked.
Well, the best thing I've learned in my job is that you can't have rules about how things go. Whatever gets you to where you got to go, that's what you'll know it. And we're able to be cohesive because we have these 30 plus years of literally being in each other's pockets and experiencing so much of life together, a lot of the shittier shit too. And
you realize how special it is, though, too, right? To songwrite like that.
I think so.
I love to ask bands that, how they do it. It's not always this easy.
I mean, we did that way back on that unreleased third album, which became, that's how it would be. I'd kind of sit around and spit out lyrics or ideas. And there's even a lyric on the new album of High Water that on Hellbound. And it was that, she was working in a topless place, stopped in for a beer. That whole bit, like, she likes to shake it to the crew. They don't play Bob Dylan here. I had written that as a couplet and given it to David back when we were doing the third album. And he had saved it for all these years and came back and says, I'd always loved this. Let's do this, because it's a funny little nod to Dylan and back again, because that is a cop from Dylan, but it's a mention of it. I hadn't really, I wrote that. He's like, absolutely, I remember it. And I said, okay. And so that's how that started.
Like, you're welcome.
We backfilled from there. And it became the second verse, but then we had Baker had given me that basic riff, and I had constructed a chorus around it. That riff was a little bit different, and I kind of constructed that. And then he came in and says, I have this thing. Remember you said this in 92? I'm like, no, but okay. Nope. And so it really is pulled from all over. So sometimes it'll be a line that somebody has that's just a spurring line. And then maybe me and David will trade while we're sitting there, like just kind of like spitball.
I love that. I mean, it's crazy, because there are some bands that, say the guitar player wrote, and then like their next album, the rest of the band wanted to write with them, and this is true. The album changed. The sound totally changed the band. It wasn't the same band that everybody fell in love with, because, he let other people work with him.
Right.
Not because he didn't want to, but sometimes a band has a certain sound by like one person writing, and one person does the lyrics and that.
A lot of times,
you guys have a special thing where it's like a conglomerate where everyone's just kind of working together, and it's one mind.
Yeah, it's we're lucky. I think part of it is, like I said, the template is really strong. What was the foundation of the band was so strong that we have a really good lingua franca. We have a good common language. that we all pull from, that we know these are the sources that are kind of what we want this band to be.
Right.
You know, and so, and there are things that we throw in that aren't part of that, that we sometimes let them slip through, and a lot of people don't even notice that we're doing.
I think because of David's voice, it came out with a certain sound. It gives you guys a little bit more stretching room, as long as his voice is there.
Yeah,
like it's Junkyard. I mean, unfortunately, probably if David did anything else, it'd be like, it's David. Oh, it's Junkyard, or is it? Oh, it's Junkyard. Like he's attached to it more than probably anybody.
Yeah, he's so identifiable that once he's on it, it can become.
That voice is the only voice out there that sounds like him.
You know, I mean, we've always say, I mean, you know, we used to laugh that we serve at the pleasure of the David Roach, because in Spain they call him the David Roach. You know, we always just laugh, but you know, this is, you know, he's the show, and these records are kind of produced. The whole thing is sort of created to kind of give him a good platform, because if he's not up there believing it, no one's going to fucking believe it, and no one's going to pay to see it, and no one's going to buy the fucking record. So if it's not ringing true with David quickly, we're off it pretty fast. It's got to connect with him, you know.
I do think that a band is the sum of all its parts. So as great as you have, I always use the word satellite, pulling one person into the band or one album or one hit single, once you're there, the band's there. Like he couldn't be who he is without the band. So there's the whole
well, I've always said, like, you know, you could probably hire guys and go out and do it without us, and he's like, you're fucking crazy, I'd never do it, you know. He realizes that there is a thing to it as well, that he couldn't do it without us, obviously. So there's never any like issue about. I mean,
no, I don't mean that. I mean, I'm saying
that I wouldn't be mad at him. I understand people have, you know what I mean. But he doesn't want to do it like that. His integrity level is that it's got to be this core thing, or else it's never going to work. And he can't.
I think he also realized the same respect for you guys. So I think there's a whole process. There's a lot more to the.
I think so. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think it's, you know, you're lucky to work with a singer who has, you know, brings so much to the table, you know, and you can really write things for him or with him in mind that you know will suit him. Like, you know, it's like a jacket you can put on, a Junkyard vest.
He's like the driver. If you guys are the wheels, take a wheel or two off you, he's not going anywhere.
He knows that.
You can drive by, you know the driver's there, but
you know, that's true. And I think that's why, you know, people say, like, when Jimmy joined the band or whatever, you know, we don't pull from, like, you have to have been there. Like, we're not a band that could really do well with some young guy who probably could outplay all of us and knows our records backwards and forwards. But the common, you know, stuff, like Jimmy having been in the, you know, being in Rocksteady Angels, and then now hadn't been in the Hangman for a long while, and Comatones and all that stuff. It was really important that we find someone who, when we made these references about these obscure, weird things at White Trash and Go-Go, like, I remember that night. And that's really hard. There's only a couple hundred of these people on the planet. And most of them are in either LA Guns, Guns N' Roses, Faster Pussy. You know, I mean, there aren't a lot of these guys out there. So, and we have a very specific thing where you can say, you know, that second Tex and the Horseheads album, most people are like, what? You know, but Jimmy was that. And so we have a lot of that. So when we start talking about, when we have musical shorthand that is just, you can't replace easily. And so we don't take that for granted either, you know. And you know, so like, and circling back to the writing, there's really no set pattern. And I think David often laughs because people come up to him and, you know, I've seen people with tattoos of lyrics on their arms from a Junkyard song. He goes, David, this is my favorite lyric of all time. And he just goes, oh, Tim wrote it. he just doesn't, he does it under his breath. He doesn't tell the guy.
Yeah,
you
right.
Point to me like, oh, that guy over there.
I go, it is pretty good. You know, it is pretty good.
Your better ones.
You know, and David's always says that, you know, he's very quick to give credit. He doesn't hog credit, but it does happen. But that's okay.
It's funny.
If someone's moved to put anything with the band on their person, whether it's a t-shirt or a tattoo or a patch, that speaks to all of us. You know, it wouldn't have been delivered right if Pat wasn't playing on it. It wouldn't be right. You know, we got to have the Monrovia swing of Pat and Todd. And, you know, it's all the thing. So just because the word is the only thing that could get written, it doesn't mean that word would have any meaning if it didn't have the underpinnings of what this is.
And I agree.
So
I agree.
And so no one. So I never take it as like, oh, look at me. It's not a look at me band. It's a look at David band, and he knows that he sees those things and realizes, like, yeah, it's all of us. It's a sum of
Yeah.
parts in a really big way. I think probably more than we ever realize, you know.
Right. We're also the type of band. I mean, you hear all these bands, you know, they go through members, they have drama, this and that, and it's like, no, we don't do that. We just, you know, we're five guys, we're adults. We don't argue about any band business or any of that shit. I think the only argument we have maybe is like, you know, sports related or something. Jesus.
I think a good thing we have is that people really respect each other's various abilities, what they
Yeah.
bring to the table. And so let's say if I just say for me, it's like, I really think this song needs to do A, B, C, and D, and I don't really know how to explain it. Most people go like, okay, you say that, that's it. And
Right.
Pat deals with so much of our technical and all the other business side. He's like, we should be doing A, B, C, and D for whatever this merchant thing. I'm like, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
We don't. And Todd is our visual. Is like, this visual sucks. We need to look at A, B, C, and D. And I always step back and go, you go. And that's just
exactly.
the way it is. You know, we have to, it's not like we delegate, but we've come to know that we each fulfill a certain role in all aspects.
Are you saying you're mature? Are you guys saying Junkyard is mature?
Yeah, basically.
Careful now. It's a secret just between us. Are you guys mature now?
Probably more mature.
I think we're also lazy enough to like staying in our own lanes because we feel comfortable there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It sounds like maturity. You have books
this.
behind you.
I don't know that. You do that. You know, I mean, so there is some of that. Like, I don't want to look like a fool and stick my neck out and not know what the fuck I'm talking about, which, you know, would happen in a lot of these things. So I know my way around the song. I'll say that.
Yeah, right.
Everything else, you know.
It's really good to hear that you guys have such a team spirit.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a good team.
It's good, and it really, you guys, you look at your history. There really has been a lot of member change. I know recently somebody
It
you
feels
lost.
like a lot, but I
Right.
guess not.
No,
It's not
Trust
really.
me.
Yeah, it's only a few. I think three, maybe 3 or 4
Yeah.
total.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately we lost one of them.
yeah, I was sad to hear that.
Car accident. Yeah, that was just kind of out of the blue. You know, we had actually touched base back with him. He sat in with us in 2016, which was kind of cool. But it was,
that was
you know,
great because I had never gotten a chance to play with him before.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd known him forever, but
Right.
you know, I never sat in
play
with
with
the
him.
band or anything. But and he got up and did Texas with us. And
Yeah,
it was
solid.
great. And he was on my side, and he was grinning. He came up after me, like, "Man, I like all that shit you put." I mean, Clay was a character beyond all characters. I mean, if you really, I mean, there are stories about him for days and days, and they're all fucking true. He really was. He was quiet, really, but he did carry a big fucking stick. I'm telling you, he was someone you didn't fuck with, but he was a sweetheart too. He was a real interesting. He was the real deal. He was a real rock and roller. You know, he was
so young too. It's just,
you know, and he had really, you know, he had his ups and downs. I don't know how much people know. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but you know, he had really helped a lot of people in the later part of his life dealing with sobriety and all that other stuff. So, you know, it's funny. I mean, it was a lot of years intervening and, you know, in between, and it was just great. He showed up there. I'm really glad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's how great is that, huh?
Yeah.
You got that.
Yeah. It was, I think for all of us, because none of us ever saw him again.
No, after that it was after that he moved to Hawaii and was helping somebody out there.
So it was very sad, you know, but I think when we found out, we were all really glad that had happened, and we'd had a chance to, you know, we basically sat in the dressing room and bullshit it, you know, like the old days. Great. That was the really fun bit as well, just telling war stories and lying to each other. It was really good. So it's very sad, but you know, you know, and we all are, you know, heartbroken about it. He was a real character, a good dude.
Yeah. Oh, when you're so young too. I mean, it's just the worst. You just feel like so much of your life. Even if you hear anybody that I don't even know, you know what I mean? And it's like your heart breaks.
No,
he's got a young daughter. It's really very sad.
That breaks my heart.
And there is a GoFundMe that you can find through our site. So if anyone feels like they want to contribute, we really encourage it. You know,
the link will be we'll put the link underneath this stuff too. Okay.
And so you know, this has been obviously a very difficult time in a lot of ways, and it's been close to home for a lot of people. So we're about to put out a single that we recorded during lockdown, and which sounds really good.
Yeah.
We've been playing it live with the A side live a little bit, but we have the B sides pre-rocking too. And we're sort of approaching like we did High Water, whereas we're going to put out a single first that will be on the record like we did with Faded in the River. and then we will go in and finish up the rest of the record. So we've been writing, and so far the record, it's actually coming along really. I mean, it's our usual glacial pace,
Yes.
but it's good. And there's a
Yeah.
couple. We have a couple. There's a handful already that are pretty well fleshed out. We need to get going, but we finally kind of circled in with the label and have the beginnings of a schedule for a record, because no one knew, and if we couldn't support it, we weren't really interested in.
Yeah.
Well,
we have
that's
to
an
do
interesting
our
thing.
play,
Yeah, a lot of
so-
bands have totally different ways of handling this. Some of them are like, I put the album out, bands should have
Yeah.
it now so they can listen to it. And for some people, it works. I mean, there is really no working formula for this.
No,
Some
no,
bands
not
are
at
like,
all.
we're gonna hold on to this because we want to work it on the road. you know?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think our we sell the most records when we're active and on the road, because our name gets out there more, and whether it's on festivals or doing Monsters Rock, whatever those kind of things, that adds to our our profile. We don't we're pretty we're Luddites compared to a lot of younger bands in terms of digital and all that stuff. And our fans still like the physical. They like the physical CD, the physical band, the physical. We did that digital in the beginning of summer. We put out all the B-sides from High Water as a digital only release. And, it was great because that stuff was only available for, in a very small number. So we want people to have something. But there's still people like, when are you going to put that out as a CD, which we're actually talking about. But
people are saying CD. I'm like, when are you going to put that as an album?
That too, yeah.
We got to stop talking about CDs, everybody. I don't know. I'll cover my ears.
I know, it's funny.
We got through that. Let's have records, and then they go, let's take all of our music and we're going to compress it like this. We take all the highs and the lows.
Right.
And just, you guys like this? You like this? This is what you got now.
Yep.
No, and then it goes away. Now we're like, we're liking vinyl again.
Yeah.
We like vinyl too, but it's it's more complicated. That.
It's complicated. It costs different
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You can get a CD press at 7-Eleven almost. So it's a lot easier to mass produce. So but we are working on a new record, and probably going to be aggressively getting after it in the spring, and hopefully have this single out of the song Lifer in the next month or so. Doing art and getting once you have art, you can get an actual release date, because then you can lock in a pressing plant, because pressing plants are always the hamstring these days, because we're doing a 7-inch vinyl. So
I'll see vinyl. There you go.
Yeah,
good idea. Good idea.
We're not doing anything without vinyl anymore. The digital only was just kind of as a stopgap, because we because we really planned to have this record at beginning and have this new single out, and we were going to do a summer tour supporting the single. So it was kind of like, well, now what? And there you have it. So that's hence the digital.
Any little porch performances, or any streaming things, anything to tide you over in the meantime for the fans?
We've talked about more. We did a couple. I'm sort of thinking people have lost some enthusiasm for them. I don't know. I mean, we did an acoustic one for my living room, which was kind of fun, but
that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough technically with those things too, and so we are. If if it doesn't open sooner than later, we'll probably do something just to maybe to promote. Maybe when the single comes out, we'll do a something that'll be promoting the single.
Yeah.
Play it and the B-side, and we'll do maybe some stuff we haven't done before, or But we're still in the planning of let's make a record. Let's think about when we could go back out, because there is some light at this end of this tunnel that doesn't seem to be a train. So. I hear talk of fall for people. I know some bands have fall tours booked, and we're talking about December. We actually finally have been talking to our agent again about what do we do? When do we play? So all of these things are kind of coming into play. A lot of it has to do with the availability of vaccines and all that other stuff. And
remember when they were all talking about it's gonna be March? That was the industry thing. The industry's going, it's gonna be March. It's gonna be March.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
I'm like, it's not gonna be March. It's not gonna be March.
No.
I hesitate to say anything, because
yeah,
I had a feeling that even then that was going to be a little aggressive. But
I didn't think that was crazy.
Maybe.
I think fall's a lot safer, even if Fauci's saying fall.
I think so. Yeah.
A little more realistic. I mean, it could still go out, but I hope so. I mean, I want it to be safe for everybody too. I don't want to go out. I don't want to risk it for anything. I mean, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I don't want to risk it for us. To be quite honest with you, I mean, it's not a lot of fun to go do a show where you're quarantined in a dressing room, and we don't play places with great dressing rooms. I'll say as well. You go from your shitty motel to your rented van to your shitty fucking dressing room, and because you can have no contact with any of the audience really. And if we do
Which-
meet and greets, they've got to be 10 feet away, and we can't even.
Right.
I mean, I realize there's still going to be probably some masking and everything for a long time, but I'd like it to have. I'd like to be able to walk from the dressing room to the bar and have a beer or maybe chat with a fan or two, and it not feel like I'm taking my life into my own hands.
Yeah,
I agree.
I'm not that paranoid. Obviously, if we're wearing masks, everything would probably be fine. But and also playing to playing to 25% or 50% capacity. Sometimes we do that whether we like it or not. But
Now you can call it COVID problem.
I like the idea of our fans being able to heave towards the front and actually do what they usually do, which is be slightly inappropriate. So
yeah. Also,
when you get the low attendance, you can be like, they must have COVID in this town.
Big COVID.
It's bad COVID area.
Guys, big COVID
Hotspot. Hotspot.
Also, when
they got a lot of COVID here, it's like Boston.
Yeah, right.
So yeah.
Also, Tim, when you mentioned the shitty backstage rooms in the shitty hotels, we mean that in the most lovingly way. To all the places that put us
I know.
up.
That environment makes you who you are. Writes the songs. It's the grit,
When they book us at the shitty when they book us at the Motel 6, they make sure it's the best, shittiest motel possible.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's the good one. It's the
near the airport.
The
it's always near the airport.
Yeah. Rock bar, real rock and roll venues are not supposed to have great, dressing rooms. 930 Club, CBG, they all had terrible dressing rooms. So CB's, I'm not saying that. It's just, it doesn't encourage hunkering down and hiding.
Part of it's tongue in cheek and part of it's not. I think it's but it is. You need to be around people. You can't just not.
It's not feasible. It's not realistic with us as well. You can't tell David
not with our
talk to people. It's just not. It's not feasible. So we want everyone to be able to have fun. I mean, that's sort of the idea. A little bit of fun. Not everything is
nice to have some of that.
Right?
I think playing a few shows, I can see. Some people have done streaming. Some people have tried concerts and they haven't worked as much. I know. I was just reading the other day. Doropesh tried the drive-in theater thing.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You tried that. I think lately, I didn't catch the tail end of it, but I think she was saying it was still a lot of problems with that too, because of the distance and because of that. So, but she gave it a shot. I mean, you give people credit for trying different things,
Yeah.
You gotta try. I mean, we did the Monsters of Rock thing, and that was fine. But you're playing to know people.
Right.
It's a bit sterile, And
for us, it was fun because
it was great to play, and we sounded.
We did play in front of it was like a stylized band practice with production, but we actually did play in front of about 9 people.
Yeah,
sometimes sometimes
we
play with sometimes that's a regular gig.
It goes back to your statement.
It reminded me of the old days when we used to do showcases for labels. You remember that, Pat? And they take you into a fancy rehearsal studio that didn't look not unlike what we played at, and it would be like 5 label guys sitting on a couch, and
just
you
like this
set to them, like your arms crossed, and those, and as we all learned from the Ramones, and we learned from those kind of things, like you just don't stop between songs. It's you go bam, 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 bam. And so that wasn't really a problem for us. We don't like stop between songs anyway, unless it's absolutely fucking necessary, like a swig of a beer or we're going to pass out. But, so that part isn't too, that we were able to, we're pretty good about getting through stuff fast, Stage banter has never been our forte.
No.
No.
So that's your song, right?
Exactly. We leave that to Danko Jones. He's good at shit like that.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
You guys, this has been great. I want to thank you guys. So next time you're ready to produce your thing, we'll have you guys back on again. Okay, you got some more stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
We got the single ready to go. We'll come. We'll find you.
Yes.
You know where I am.
We'll promote the shit out of it.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll support you guys. I want to thank you for being on the show, guys.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks.